Dr. Larry Bucshon, the guest of the Garrison Show. I wish I could say for a weekly visit, but he gets to us as often as he can. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning to you.
I asked you off air, are you about ready to come home and start being a surgeon again?
Well, some days I wonder, Greg, but let me tell you,
we're halfway kidding.
We're up here fighting for the American people, so I'm happy I'm here.
Well, there's lots for us to talk about. There's lots going on. And we got the perspective from the Senate side, talking to Dick Lugar this morning, and I think the frustration factor amongst senators that want to see some stuff done is about to the boiling point. But Harry Reid can't help himself, and I think we were talking about this a little bit. Their ideology and their zeal and their radical nature is in their way. They can't seem to get beyond that to look at what's going to be good for folks, and so then they decide it's okay to go up $1 trillion
well, they just, as you know, Greg, I mean, the president and Senator Reid just see things much differently than I do, and that you probably do. They want to continue to tax the American people. They want to They want to continue to spend money. It's been a year-long battle to try to get the finances of this government back in shape, and then at the end of the year, the Senate on the payroll tax and the doc fix puts in place an unworkable, really chaotic 2-month extension that just doesn't work for the American people and punts and he says they're going home for the holidays. So it's been a year-long struggle.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the 1-2 punch here that came from the Senate. Matter of fact, I think Senator Lugar was one of its foundational sponsors, which and I talk with him about kicking the can, and I think he sees that. But at the same time, it was the senator's position that we got a 2-month extension on the payroll tax cuts because they were able to search around and find enough cuts someplace else so that would be revenue neutral. And then, of course, they got the Keystone Pipeline in there with it as well. Now,
that's the gist of it. I mean, the gist of it is that Senator Reid and his other Democrat colleagues don't want to pay for anything. They just want to do things and add it to the deficit, and that was the biggest argument. How do you pay for a year-long extension? I mean, and they're just not willing to cut federal spending to pay for these things, and. In the House of Representatives, the House Republicans, as you know, we've battled all year and we're on the side of the American people that the federal government cannot continue to spend money we don't have. And Senator Reid just doesn't see it that way.
It's a different reality, Doctor. It's a parallel universe with these guys. And I know I've talked to all of you at different times about the frustration you have to feel when you get down to the nubbins, as they say in the country. When you get down to the place where you have to talk about the deficit. And what happens is, what I've seen is their eyes glaze over and they race off in another direction, won't address it, and claim it's because we're not taking enough money from the American people. Let's tax the rich some more. And they like to, as these idiots that poop on police cars and stink up the cities are want to say, that they're the 99%, which means that they're aiming at the 1%. So we looked up the contribution of that 1%. They pay over 40% of all the taxes. That's just a staggering number, and that's not enough. And then you got, of course, almost half the population doesn't pay any federal taxes.
Well, the president is divisive, Greg. I mean, he sees right now, his polling is very bad. His approval rating on the economy is abysmal, as it should be. And dividing the American people, the president sees as a way that he can potentially get reelected, and that's what he's trying to do. We don't want to divide the American people. The American people need to be together on this. Everybody knows that what fairness means, and like you said, the top 1% are already paying a very high percentage of the income taxes. The president banks on the fact that people like us aren't going to look up what the facts are. But the fact of the matter is that this president, Senator Reid, Ms. Pelosi, philosophically, like big government, they believe in high taxes and they believe in big government programs. And I just don't believe in that. We need to decrease the size of the federal government, get it out of the way of the American people, and do what the Constitution tells us to do, and quit getting in everybody's lives all the time.
Well, good luck with that one. Okay, I want to make sure that we get sort of a period at the end of the paragraph here with regard to the proposal that came out of the Senate, which is a 2-month extension of the payroll tax cuts.
Yeah,
and a go on the Keystone Pipeline. Give me your prediction now that that's back in the House. I know that Boehner said something about a conference committee. Reid says he won't do that. Where's this thing going? So we look at this last week before Christmas as a bunch of Hoosiers. What do we expect to see?
Well, first of all, we will have a deal done before the end of the year. So I think I'm pretty optimistic about that. But the way we see it in the House of Representatives is that a 2-month extension is just unworkable. And that's not just my opinion. The National Payroll Reporting Consortium, it represents a third of the payroll people in this country, using terms like unworkable or chaotic for employers, small business people. It's just an unworkable, kick the can down the road, punt, whatever you want to call it, that is not the right thing to do for the American people. Let me tell you, as you probably might gather, I very rarely agree with President Obama, but let me tell you what he said. It would be inexcusable for Congress not to further extend this middle class tax cut, as he called it, for the rest of the year. Ms. Pelosi on Saturday, when she heard about the Senate bill 2 months, she said the House Democrats will return to Washington to take up this legislation without delay and keep fighting to extend the provisions for a full year. But guess what happened on Sunday? They realized that it might be a political advantage. And now Senator Reid says he won't come back. But I can tell you that today in the House of Representatives, we're going to call for a conference to get the differences between the Senate and the House resolved. We've been doing this in the federal government since 1789. And Mr. Reid, Senator Reid, will bring the Senate back and do this. And if he doesn't, let me tell you, it can go on to the President of the United States. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution says the President can convene both houses or either of them if he chooses to do so. Mm-hmm. So the fact of the matter is, Greg, is that the House of Representatives, we're going to do our work. We've done our work. A 2-month extension is not acceptable to me or to the House Republicans. And we want to work this out. Look, I mean, this is the way the government is supposed to work. The American people are sick of kicking the can down the road and just, when it gets tough, punt. Let me tell you, if we had this decision in April, would we have punted for 2 months? No. You know why? Because Senator Reid wanted to pass something and go home for the holiday. So, the Senate's a different dynamic. I don't want to judge our Republican senators on what they did over in the Senate side. It's a different dynamic. But on the House side, we just can't accept it.
Well, it's interesting because there's a powerful and a bright line of difference between at least Senator Lugar and you guys. And I don't know about Senator Coates because I've not talked to him. I don't know whether he was one of them that voted for that. And I wouldn't begin to surmise because he's been his own thinker throughout the time since he's been back in the Senate. But I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's take a quick break here.
Okay.
That's right. You got to take off. So let me wrap this up with you for 1 second.
I probably got a few more minutes if you got them. I'll be happy to hang on the line.
Okay. Well, let's just keep on rocking here.
All right.
We'll just go along so you can keep up with the Grim Reaper. You mentioned Article 2, Section 3. There ain't no way that kid's going to skip 18 days of playing golf in Hawaii to come back here.
Well, I mean, if he doesn't, then I think the American people get a pretty clear picture about what he thinks about his job and about
that's a $3 million vacation.
I know. I read that.
That's the taxpayer piece of it. And I don't want to get into these giggle weeds, but just momentarily before we move on to a couple of other really important pieces.
Sure.
You talk about tone deaf. How do you do that? How do you just flaunt the rich and famous? I mean, nobody does this. We don't know 3 people as Hoosiers that can spend $2 million of their own money on a vacation in these tough times. But they take hours and go out there and go play. I
They think they're just disconnected from the American people, Greg. I mean, the fact of the matter is, in tough times, you need to buckle down. And right now, this president needs to buckle down with Senator Reid and work with House Republicans to get the work done before the end of the year. Listen, as a surgeon, people get sick on every day of the year. It's not like Christmas comes up and people decide, hey, I'm not going to have a heart attack because it's Christmas. Okay? That's just not going to happen.
No, it's sure not.
And that's the way I take my job here in Washington, D.C. Listen, the American people, all of a sudden, we don't just shut down the government because it happens to be a holiday. Don't get me wrong. I want to spend the holidays with my family, too, but I've got a job to do. And the fact of the matter is the president and Senator Reid need to quit this rhetoric where we're not coming back and realize that they just don't have a leg to stand on. The American people are not going to stand for that.
I never thought that anybody could make me wish for Tom Daschle to be back in a position of authority. But Harry Reid makes Tom Daschle look like a pussycat. I don't think I've ever seen a more doctrinaire, although that's not true. Mrs. Pelosi's the same way. The two of them are peas in a pot.
They are.
That's Socialist 1 and Socialist 2 right there. Okay, very quickly, because this audience is concerned, I might think maybe a little more than they should be, but that's not for me to say, over this defense authorization bill. A lot of folks really, really concerned that this is going to obviate posse comitatus, that this is going to take innocent American citizens and jerk them out of their homes and stick them someplace with no habeas corpus. We've had Andy McCarthy on twice, who's intimately familiar with the proposals and says that those aren't eventualities. What do you see in that bill, and maybe what do you think is going to happen to it?
Well, let me tell you. First of all, I voted against it. And I voted against it because there are some ongoing constitutional uncertainty about the detainee preventions in there. Now, the chances are that the language in there will be acceptable and will not allow what you just described to happen. However, I don't think there should be any uncertainty when you pass these type of laws about our liberties and the right of the American people to be free. And I was concerned about it enough. I had a long conversation with Congressman Pence about this issue. And I think there is a little bit of constitutional uncertainty, although I don't think it is as grave as some people say. But I've just recently co-sponsored a bill by Representative Landry from Louisiana that will further clarify that. And I think that everyone recognizes that there needs to be more clarification.
Well, it's certainly got a lot of folks' attention, and I want to make sure that my audience hears me say that I hear them, as well as I think you do too. I don't come to that conclusion myself with the language that I've read, and I got a great regard for Andrew McCarthy, who is a constitutional scholar of the first magnitude. You got to get going, so do we. Merry Christmas, my friend. Thanks so much for being our guest.
Merry Christmas, Greg.
We'll catch up with you very soon. You take care of yourself. Dr. Larry Bucshon, down Evansville way. Right back. Stick with us.